And there I was, 18,000 feet above the Hawaiian island of Oahu, one of the most beautiful places on Earth, surrounded on every side by thousands of miles of deep ocean, preparing for what was surely my inevitable death, all while being strapped snug tight against a big burly man in flip-flops who I had just met minutes before. The height was sickening, my mind was numb, and I did not want to jump. I don't want to die. Not again. Because death is my enemy. And yet, I find myself alive once more on the Rusty Cage Show.
Warning. The activities in this video are performed under the supervision of professionals. Cage theft is legally required to advise that you do not attempt. Do not attempt!
I don't like flying. I don't like airplanes. I don't know, I just don't trust them. So when my corporate bosses at Cage Tech sent me on a 2,500 mile flight over open water to my destination of Oahu, Hawaii, it only offered me sleepless hours in a cramped coach cabin seat, thinking about the possibility of a plane malfunction, dropping me into the middle of the shark-infested Pacific Ocean, hours away from any chance of rescue. But what I fear worse than my airplane falling out of the sky is falling through the sky out of an airplane. Which is exactly what I was sent here to do.
Do you fear death or something?
Yes.
So then why would you possibly fear skydiving? Look at this graph. At its peak, the average number of annual deaths from skydiving was only around 42 persons. And that number has been steadily declining. In 2024, there was only 9 fatalities.
But I could easily be one of them. I've seen what happens when parachutes fail.
Pull the cord! Your emergency cord!
Hey, pay attention. The chances of a main chute failure is only 1 in 1,000.
I don't like those odds.
That's why there are reserve chutes, subject to stricter quality control regulations and routine inspection. Their failure rate is only 1 in 10,000. So for both to fail, I don't know, you do the math.
I couldn't.
It's 1 in a million. Of course, that's just the chance of a chute failure. If you factor in everything else that could go wrong, your chances of dying in a single jump are estimated to be about 1 in 357,000.
So
you'll be fine. Probably.
I wasn't convinced. A 1 in 357,000 chance, based on annual statistics? That's 3 times more likely than getting struck by lightning, 37 times less likely than dying in a car crash, and 840 times more likely than winning the lotto. And I'm still hoping to win the lotto. But this? I don't know why anyone would want to jump out of a perfectly good airplane.
Acrophobia.
A word that describes the fear of falling, thought to have stemmed from our ancestors' survival instincts to avoid dangerous heights. One of many common instinctual fears, such as nyctophobia, a fear of darkness, ophidiophobia, a fear of snakes, and homophobia, a fear of being strapped ass to dick to another man as you jump out of an airplane. A fall from 13 to 16 feet is survivable, but depending on body position, can cause serious damage. Now 50 feet, or about 4.5 stories high, is considered the height where the fall becomes 50% fatal, causing things like spinal fractures, internal bleeding, and traumatic brain injuries. But survival becomes unlikely, near 100% fatal, once you surpass approximately 85 feet. But all of this depends on the position that your body's in as it impacts the ground, just as much as the height that you're falling from. Luckily for me, I'd be jumping from 18,000 feet, a height from which, without properly functioning parachutes, would render me nothing more than a pulpy slop of meat in the dirt. But believe it or not, people have survived free falls from higher up. In 1971, a potential terrorist's briefcase bomb exploded inside the baggage compartment of Yugoslavian Airlines Flight 367, causing the aircraft to break apart into 3 chunks, spin out of control, and crash near a Czechoslovakian village, killing 27 out of 28 people aboard. Everyone was pulverized, except for the 22-year-old flight attendant, Vesna Volovic. who, through a nightmarish twist of good fortune, somehow got pinned by a food cart in the rear section of the broken plane's fuselage as it proceeded to separate into pieces and plummet 33,338 feet to the ground. Miraculously, Vesna survived the effects of the high-altitude decompression, and with the help of the plane's tail-end air resistance, landed on a snow-covered forested hillside, cushioning the impact, but leaving her in a days-long coma with a fractured skull, 3 broken vertebrae, broken legs, broken ribs, and a fractured pelvis.
I mean, this bitch was busted.
But after months of rehabilitation, Vesna would fully recover from her injuries, except for a permanent limp. And despite becoming a national folk hero, she would go on to suffer from survivor's guilt until she died at the age of 66.
I was starting to feel better about my odds. I mean, if she can survive the fall, then surely I can too. If for some reason, God forbid, both of my parachutes fail, then I will simply glide over to the nearest Hawaiian snow-covered forest to break my fall. Or maybe I'll just try to land in the ocean and let the water cushion my impact.
Shut up! Don't be stupid. Water won't break your fall unless you're executing a near-perfect feet-first body formation. Any impact into the water from over 100 feet is almost guaranteed to kill you. Even in a stable belly-to-earth position, you'll reach a terminal velocity of about 120 miles per hour within 12 to 15 seconds. At that speed, water might as well be concrete.
Dang.
The revolution has already begun. The only thing missing is you. Until now, Cage Tech Juicing Solutions presents How to Make Lemonade, a full comprehensive guide with step-by-step instructions on how to build your very own 20-foot-tall lemon chopper. Measurement accurate diagrams, helpful tricks and tips, and of course, each page contains a fun fact that will get your blood boiling and can only be cooled down with a cold glass of lemonade. Plus, our deluxe package comes with posters, stickers, and patches. But don't delay, stock is limited, so order your copy today, only at cagetech.com.
Fun. Everybody loves fun. Fun people, fun Ford Ranger.
My big jump was still a few days away, and I could feel the nervousness growing in the pit of my stomach. That, or it was the vacation constipation that had prevented me from moving my bowels since I had left Florida. Probably both.
I tried to clear my mind by hiking a scenic trek up the historic World War II military pillbox bunkers in Lanikai. And yet the trail I was on wasn't helping me mitigate my fear of heights. The rocky and slippery pathway to the top of the mountain was only a few feet wide, with no guide rails or safety ropes to prevent anyone from misstepping and tumbling down the steep slopes.
Any glance to the left or right just gave me vertigo, being this high up overlooking half the island. And this made me wonder, how high up do you have to go before your brain stops being able to register the distance between you and the ground, and vertigo no longer gets activated? When Alan Eustace broke the world record with his 2014 highest jump, he was lifted via balloon in a pressurized suit to a height of 135,889 feet above the Earth's surface. Did he feel queasy looking down from the stratosphere as he fell through the thin, low-density air offering little to no resistance? Did he even feel the effects of falling, despite reaching peak speeds of 822 miles an hour? And then, how would I feel when I finally looked down from the open door of a small airplane? Whatever, this whole activity is fucking insane. I mean, who even was the first person to look down from some great height and think, fuck it, I'm gonna jump and hope this random cloth will slow me down?
Cage Tech Juicing Solutions presents to you a brief history of skydiving. Well, howdy, folks. Choppy here. You know, a lot of folks think that Leonardo da Vinci invented the first parachute, but some evidence suggests that it actually goes back way further to the 4th century BCE China, where Chinamen used bamboo and cloth to make a parachute-like device. But the earliest known depictions of a parachute design is credited to the Italian Francesco de Giorgio Martini. Leonardo da Vinci would later improve on this concept with his wooden frame pyramidal shape. In 1785, a fella dropped a dog attached to a framed parachute from a hot air balloon. Thankfully, the dog lived. In 1797, the first frameless parachute was demonstrated by attaching it to the basket of a hot air balloon. When the balloon was cut away, the pilot floated down uninjured from 3,000 feet. Golly, 3,000 feet? That's gonna need a lot of shoes. By 1911, the first person successfully parachuted from an airplane. During World War I, the military began using parachutes for observers on observation balloons. By World War II, airborne forces would eventually switch from silk to nylon canvases to drop troops behind enemy lines in large-scale surprise attacks. After the war's end, skydiving had begun to develop into its own thrill-seeking hobby, reaching massive popularity in the late 1960s. And with the advent of tandem jumping in 1983, the sport would skyrocket in popularity. Who knew it would take hundreds of years to figure out how to fall down? But now you know.
So, what could go wrong?
Excellent question. Twisted lines, canopy tears, improper chute packing, chute deployment failure, misjudging wind direction, speed, or terrain leading to hard landing or power line entanglement, hypoxia, dangerously high heart rates, mid-air collisions, and of course, flat spin.
The uncontrolled rotational movement which causes divers to spin rapidly if their body position is imbalanced or their chutes don't deploy correctly, leading to dizzying disorientation or even full loss of consciousness. The thought of it all just made me want to shit my trousers. And yet I found myself suffering from my bloated bowels, still backed up by 5 days worth of digested food, unable to evacuate for some god-awful reason. This was my last chance to ensure a clean skydiving experience. If a breakfast of squid and chocolate milk didn't send my large intestines into quick action, then it might result in a situation where double chute failure would be a merciful end. It's always at the most inopportune times that the levee breaks.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck. Good luck.
Let's go out to the kitchen.
As they strapped me in, the anticipation and nervousness began to grow in ways that I'd never experienced before. I honestly didn't know what emotion I was feeling, so I just played it cool the best I could.
How are you doing today?
Very good.
Any reason why you decided to go skydiving?
Yes, Cage Tech, the good people at Cage Tech allowed me this opportunity to face my fear of airplanes falling from heights. And so, thank you, Cage Tech.
I knew that if I thought too much about what I was about to do, I would likely induce a panic attack. I am not an adrenaline junkie, and I have this uncontrollable aberration for heights and falling that has prevented me from ever even riding a roller coaster, larger than the ones intended for small children and scared pussies. I mean, I've tried to wait in line for the big ones, with their suspensefully upward climbs, lingering hesitations overlooking a speedy downward drop of 100+ feet into the chaotic twists, loops, and turns awaiting below. And yet every single time I found some excuse to exit the line before I approached the loading gate. I once visited the Hoover Dam, and standing on top overlooking the long drop down, my asshole puckered at any attempt to look over the side railing. It infected my brain with illogical thoughts that screamed, "If you fell over, you will surely die," followed by, "You should jump," for some reason. But this was different. This was a situation in which I had no control over. I couldn't just leave the line, as the trip was already financed by money that I was obligated to repay my corporate overlords. And on top of that, my fear of heights was being confused by the immense magnitude from the distance from which I would be falling. While I could perceive the distance that would give me hesitation to jump off the Hoover Dam or avoid big roller coasters, I had to trust that what I was about to do was beyond the comprehension of any experience that I had ever previously known. So, what was there left to fear? What choice would I have to object from? It wasn't my choice at all, but that of the man behind me on the plane bench who had just put an oxygen tube in my nose, ensuring that I stayed conscious for our upcoming downward descent. It's harder to jump than it is to be pushed. This was a comforting thought. And yet as we rose to 14,000 feet, I watched as the first of the tandem jumpers fell from the small plane. One so small that every time someone would jump out, the entire plane would shake and shift its tilt like a seesaw from an airborne hell. But we were rising another 4,000 feet up before it was my turn. Seeing the casually calm expressions on the faces of the hopefully professional tandem jumpers, I imagined that this was a laughable yet monotonously redundant part of their day job. They were experiencing every first-time jumper's exhilaration 5 to 6 times a day. Ho hum, boring. When it's our turn to jump, just let me do all the moving. I'll walk us to the exit, so just don't obstruct my movement, my tandem instructor instructed me. Fuck. We were approaching the secondary height of 18,000 feet, and I was next to face my downward spiral. I didn't know what I was about to experience, but the gentleman strapped behind me was pushing us forward to the roaring sounds of the open plane door. The cameraman was grinning with an expression that guaranteed that he had both long since accepted death and was completely apathetic to the fears of first-time jumpers, such as myself. As I looked out the plane's opening, I could see the entire island. Incredible. I was ready to die. I was ready to shit liquid squid and chocolate milk out of my ass, but all I could think about were 3 things. Thank you, God, for the life that you've given me. Forgive me for my sins. And, wait, is this motherfucker wearing flip-flops? How is that even possible? Oh, fuck, I can see the firmament. I can see the ice wall. The earth is flat, it's all a lie. I was disoriented. The wind was deafening. Where is the ground? Where is the sky? My hands were pulled out. No flat spin. Okay, I gotta stop here. So the camera guy kept trying to get me to do this cringe shit like throw up the Chaka hand sign or thumbs up. Normie behavior stuff that probably looks good for promotional videos, and in my unsettled state, I just went along with it. I guess I was too distracted to keep my wits about me. Whatever, this was an insanely unfamiliar feeling, pure sensory overload. And doesn't my face just say it all? Holy shit, just look at those flapping jowls. I could have flown myself down. Time to pick up mewing, I guess. But my main focus was to try and take in as much of this view as possible while controlling my breathing as the heavy winds battered me relentlessly, turning me into the form of Super Saiyan 2. Another high five and thumbs up to exemplify how radical the situation was. I was falling for what felt like an infinite period of time. This freefall lasted for about 1 minute and 14 seconds. For reference, that's approximately 7 times longer than a fall from the 91st floor of the Twin Towers. And honestly, the adrenaline from the initial shock had already died away after about 30 seconds, so I was just chilling, waiting for stage 2 when the main chute would be deployed. All right, enough high fives. And there it was, a quick jerking motion that re-established my body's sense of its own weight. Farewell, cameraman, and hello to an awkward 10 minutes of small talk with my tandem instructor as we slowly glided over Oahu's north shore.
How long have you been doing this for? Almost 14 years. Cool.
The rest of the float down was a continuous series of spinning in circles, taking in views, and reflecting on this experience before it had even ended. It honestly wasn't that bad at all. The complete powerlessness of having someone else do the jumping instead of me having to conquer some personal weakness and jump myself just made the whole experience feel more trivial rather than transcendent. Our landing was smooth as my tandem jumper casually dug his flip-flops into the ground like a pro. Thank you for not killing us, sir.
Christ. What'd you think of that?
I'm glad to be on the ground, but it was a lot of fun.
You had fun?
Yeah. And as for the big question...
Would you ever do it again?
I think so.
Yeah?
Definitely. I lied. One more high five before I hit the road, because my insides were about to explode.
Come on. You want one?
Surely you jest.
I had finally done it and faced my fear of heights, but more importantly, released the massive pressure that had been building up inside me for days leading up to the jump. As I read through the booklet that I was given, the day's events were beginning to be put in perspective. Was it really as nerve-wracking as anticipated? No. Did I actually accomplish any personal growth through this experience? Not really. I just kind of submitted myself to the fate and actions of others. I mean, all I did was fall out of an airplane. Anyone can do that, and they regularly do, for fun, with much less melodrama than I've presented.
And so I just allowed this skydiving booklet to humble me with its opening words. Those who are too young, too old, too weak, or just too lazy to go off conquering mountains, swimming the oceans, or camping in hostile jungles don't have to miss out on arduous activities, adrenaline rushes, and thrills of a lifetime. Well, I don't know.
I don't know if I'm too young, too old, too weak, or too lazy, but I am alive, and I guess that's good enough for now.
Wake up, Rusty. The simulation is over. You have just experienced the sensation of a successful skydive, and I believe that you are now ready to do it for real.
Wait, what?
Be calm, please, and listen closely. When I say the following phrase, you will awake once again, ready to conquer your fears, but this time, in reality. It's a beautiful day to go fishing. Isn't it, Rusty Cage?
It's a beautiful day to go fishing.
Be brave, Rusty. Death is nothing to fear. We can always bring you back.
Well, we certainly hope that you enjoyed the show, ladies and gentlemen. A big thank you to our sponsor at Cage Tech, as well as a big thank you to Trevor Howard, aka Deformer, who created much, if not most, of the original background music that you heard on tonight's episode. So be sure to go and check out his stuff. But okay, folks, the show is not over yet. We have one more act, performing their newest hit song. Ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to Ed Grits and the Stonewall Boys.
I like to get high and then fall down up in the sky into the ground. On my way up, my soul would toil, but from above I see God's world. On my way up, how I would feel, just one way down from way up here. And if I fall, I won't be scared. I'll meet my Lord up in the air. And if I die doing these things, I know my Lord will give me wings.